Hey guys, it's me, Halloween Dan, doing a real quick video again today because I just wanted to show you where I'm up to with some of my building. This isn't about my castle particularly, maybe one tiny little bit is. Mostly this is about my new pillars. I have been building and putting together some new entrance pillars because I think I might have said at some point my pillars that I built 2 years ago that have lasted 2 seasons got absolutely destroyed by the weather last year. So I'm having to rebuild them, I have no choice. But I think I've got a much better, stronger design this time. I'm using some of the similar kinds of things I've done in the construction of my castle. So join me. Okay, so we're into phase 2.0 of our build. We've moved on from the castle, the main frame of the castle, which is now stored away. There's very little extra I could do to the walls and just really finishing touches, most of which I can only do when the castle is in place. But what I can do is the finishing touches, by which I'm talking about this tower. And then I needed to build 2 new pillars for my entrance. Now you might remember both last year and the year before, I had some pillars that I made out of cardboard boxes. They were pretty big, they were about this sort of height, about 4 foot, and they had sticking out from them, they were basically cardboard boxes which I papier-mâchéed and covered in like a kind of a stony kind of effect. And I then, about here, I had a shelf that kind of stuck out, which is what my flame lights were on. And then it was just basically the top of the pillar, and then my sign went out of the top. They lasted 2 years. I was pretty pleased that they lasted 2 years, and they needed an awful lot of repair work doing to them last year. But by the end of last season, they'd been out for the better part of 3 weeks. They were very, very sodden with water, and no sooner did I take the string and stuff that was holding them up away that they just kind of collapsed on the floor and they were gone for good. So I knew this year I was going to need to make some new entranceway pillars, and I could have gone down the same road and built them the same way as I did last year, but it was actually quite labor intensive, building something out of cardboard, trying to waterproof it as best you can, realizing it's going to be out in the elements all through the season. So this just seemed the logical way to do things. I don't really know why I've never done it this way before. So all I've done, using timber that I already had because I got a load of timber to build my castle walls, I have constructed, now I'm no joiner, I'm no carpenter. These have been very poorly put together. I mean, look at this glue drip.
Oh my God, what is that?
I mean, this is horrendous. But what I've used is Gorilla Glue, and then I've used some screws, obviously, to hold it together. In places where I think it could do with a bit more support, I've added the ending plates with screws just to give them a bit more support. I put them here and there or around the frame of this. It's pretty sturdy. These frames are not going to fall apart very easily. I've glued them a lot as well. Then basically I've created this tiny little shelf. It's just held with 1 strut of timber, and then I've also glued this into place because all this shelf will be doing is holding my flame light. It is not supporting any great weight at all. It's just the flicker flame light that was on a shelf last time. I was kind of on the fence about how to do this, whether I should just replicate my old pillars but in foam and with timber. But I thought, no, do you know what? They were kind of cumbersome and kind of got in the way. And that shelf last year definitely started to take the weather a little bit too much. Flicker flame lights I've got, I don't actually know how weatherproof they are. I've had them now for 3 years, I think. And I've managed to keep them pretty dry. Every time it's been a rainy day, I've just covered them up or taken them inside. And I have to admit, I think I worry about those flicker flame lights more than I worry about most of my other things, to be quite honest with you, because I really don't know how weather rated they are, and they really do look really good when they're working. So I thought to myself, no, what I need to do is I need to figure out a way of giving them just a tiny bit more protection, just a little bit more. It doesn't have to be loads more, just something so that I don't don't feel like I have to rush to their aid every single time it starts to rain a little bit. So what I thought was, instead of having them sticking out from the pillar, I'd actually have them within the pillar on their own little shelf, and I'd build these, I'm calling them my mouths. They're like mouths, and these are like eyes of a stone creature, and the flame is within. So that's the idea. These are obviously going to be topped. Luckily, I kept my foam tops and bottoms from my old pillars. I saved them from last year because they, being made out of foam, were perfectly fine. I'm going to back this one. So this one's more complete than this one. I just wanted to show you the frame on this one. You can see it better. On this one, again, I'm going to close off the back, but not as well as these sides, because I do need to be able to access the inside of here, because I'm going to have an extension lead sealed inside there so that you can obviously plug in the flame lamps. I think they will look really good when they're finished. Obviously, I've got to add the stone effect, so I'll be getting my soldering iron out again, adding some stone effect onto these pillars, and then, like I say, I'll be topping them with the foam that I kept from last year. And then I think these will be done. They just need painting, as does my tower. That's the next phase. So the tower's waiting for painting. These guys, I'm going to get to the stage where they're ready for painting, and then I'm going to paint all three.
2,000 years later.
So here's where we're at with the pillars. I've got to film this fast before this giant storm decides to drop its rain on us. So we are doing pretty well with the pillars. As you can see, I've now carved out all the details using the soldering iron to make all the mortar lines in the pillars, just like I did with my walls, and cut out the shapes that I wanted, which is where the flame lights are going to sit on these little shelves, and be semi-protected by the toppers. You might remember these toppers, possibly, if you've been around long enough, and the bottoms as well. They were from my old pillars, so these have been kicking around now for 2 years. This will be their third season actually being out, and as you can see, they are very, very weathered. They're actually starting to look like actual weathered stone, which is very, very cool. I have obviously sliced a few chunks off here and there to resize them for these pillars, because the ones particularly at the bottom were quite a lot larger than the pillars actually are. The tops actually fit perfectly. So we've got the pretty basic shell of these things now. I think they look pretty good. The backs are still uncovered. You can see inside the backs. No one's going to see the backs. I am going to put an extra piece of foam just over these two slats here so that people can't see all the way through. And you might remember, if you saw the construction of my old pillars, that originally I had some canes that literally just pushed straight through the foam and went all the way down through the center of the old pillar. I filled in the holes because that is not what's happening in this, and instead the canes are going to be attached to the back. So I'm going to carve out some little shapes here at the back for the canes to sort of sit snugly against the back of here. I'm thinking they're quite good. I hope you like the design I've done. It's meant to look a little bit like a creature. There's its eyes and its gaping mouth. That's kind of the idea. I don't know how well that comes across, but either way, here are my pillars. I think they're pretty good. We're about to go into the stage now where I've got to paint the tops and the bottoms the same color as the rest of the pillar, which is a much darker anthracite gray than what I used on my castle. That wasn't actually supposed to be. I was trying to match the color a bit more than this, but it doesn't really matter. Now I've just got to highlight all the seams with black, which hopefully will stand out okay. This is very dark. And then I'm going to do my weathering effects and also the white highlighting. So yeah, there's a few more stages yet, but I think we're almost there. These are looking pretty much done.
A few moments later.
So two completely unanticipated things have happened whilst in the build, both of which were unanticipated, but both of which I'm quite pleased with. The first thing to note is this mess that's going on up here, which is Gorilla Glue. You might have perhaps caught the podcast of mine and Scare Dad's Middle-Aged Men Talk About Halloween podcast, and in that last episode I talked about how I had been putting together my pillars and I'd used a lot of Gorilla Glue and I accidentally glued myself to the ground.
And then I got it on the ground. I didn't realise I'd got it on the ground, and then Nell did it in shorts, so it stuck to my leg hair. I was like stuck to the ground. I was like,
Yes, that was painful. And that's what this is all about. There's a lot of Gorilla Glue in these two pillars. An unexpected thing of it just kind of exploding out from these gaps where I'd put as much Gorilla Glue as I could really do has happened. It hasn't really happened on this pillar, but on this pillar for some reason I must have just gone overboard. It's gone absolutely everywhere. But I kind of like it because I'm thinking paint this green or paint it even perhaps yellow or orange or something like that, and you've got some weird fungus that's kind of creeping out of the cracks, really kind of gross and stuff, and it's kind of dripping down in places and stuff. So yeah, kind of gross. Didn't expect that, was not planning for that. There's a little bit more around this side too, just over there, but I think with a bit of highlighting that could actually look really good. Second unanticipated thing that happened was the paint I had is anthracite grey. It's outdoor anthracite grey paint. And when I started painting these pillars yesterday, so I just painted the foam parts and I hadn't painted the tops or the bottoms, it was a very, very, very dark, almost black colour. And I was like, oh, well, maybe it's just a different shade of anthracite grey, right? Whatever. Forgetting that I hadn't actually stirred the tin. Paint had kind of done that thing where it kind of half separates. All the black pigment had risen to the top, all the whitish pigment had sunk to the bottom, and so I had indeed painted them not true anthracite grey, it was really just black. So they were very, very dark, and then when I came today to paint the tops and the bottoms, I must have stirred it or shook it or done what I was supposed to do originally, and the colour was much, much lighter, an actual anthracite grey. You'd think, oh no, what am I going to do now? I've got two-toned pillars. Well, actually, it's had a pretty good effect. First, that being that the top and the bottom is supposed to look like a different kind of stone from the rest of it anyway, so thumbs up there. But also, when I then decided quickly in a hurry to sort of see if I could help out this situation, what I did was I took the brush with not a huge amount of paint on and just started quickly, very quickly brushing it over the foam, and you get this weird now two-toned colour, like almost like real stone. It's almost the same effect as the dry brushing with white, except it's with the grey. So this is more like the colour of the stone. So now we've got this two-tone, you've got the dark underneath, the lighter anthracite grey over the top, and I think it actually looks really good. This actually looks more like stone than I think I could have made it look if I'd tried to make it look this way. Two accidents that actually have turned out pretty good. I am going to add some black highlights in all the mortar lines and things just to really make it pop, and then we'll do the weathering. The irony is I make these things look brand new as I can make them with a fresh coat of paint, and then I spend a lot of time making them look really rough and weathered again. So here we are. This is pretty much the full build of my pillars now. I will be adding the canes that I added last year back. I'll carve into the side of here just some little gouge marks to allow the canes to go run down the back of my pillars. You can see as well on the back I haven't added anywhere near as much detail because, well, you know, no one's really going to see this. It's the fronts that have received all the detail. So as you can see, I've now added all the different stages of paint that I wanted to add. We've dry brushed white onto the pillars all over just to give that highlighted effect again. I think it looks really good. I think I'm pretty pleased with how these guys have turned out. I think they look really quite stone-like. I know they don't look, I know it's not going to fool anyone, and they do just still look like pieces of foam, but I think they give you a general kind of a stony effect. I think they're pretty good. I'm really pleased with how the caps and the bases turned out. These were recycled, if you remember from me mentioning earlier, recycled from my pillars from last year. But it looks really good. I'm really glad. It's really sad. This was an accident, but I think it looks really good. So the Gorilla Glue that seeped out and oozed out along the seam of here, I've painted it green, almost like it's a moss or a slime or something coming out from underneath the stone there. I think it looks really good. I've added a little bit on this one, even though there actually wasn't any oozing apart from that bit there. All, like I say, I've got to add now are the canes that will sort of strut out from the back of these particular pillars, and then between them I'll have my archway with the sign that says Medway Manor on it. Then this will be complete. The Medway Manor sign will basically be the last stage. It'll probably be something I finish in the week before I put my display out. So I think generally I'm pretty pleased with it. I think they look pretty good. They're definitely the best designed pillars I've ever had. Certainly the sturdiest. Very briefly, here they finally are in the dark, and I think they look pretty good. I'm quite impressed with them. I think this sort of very basic open mouth and burning red eyes effect. I think it translates. I think you kind of get it. It certainly protects them a bit better. It has been raining on and off all afternoon, and I didn't leave the electrics plugged in like that. I did leave these lamps underneath, and the rain hasn't actually gotten to them, so it's very, very good. I'm actually quite impressed that they do at least partially keep the weather off. So yeah, quite pleased with these. I think they look really good. Anyway guys, from a rather wet and miserable England on this wet and miserable Sunday with my Halloweeny pillars, I bid you farewell. I hope you've enjoyed this little short video, and I will see you in the next one. Keep it spooky. Bye.